A very warm welcome to this webinar. My name is Roland Wagner, and I'm the last one in this series of these webinars. You hopefully already followed the webinar from my colleague Aaron, who showed you the integrated possibilities of artificial intelligence in CODESYS. You've seen the chatbot, you have seen the CODESYS MCP server, which interacts directly with AI system, and maybe you've seen as well the transformation of code by means of AI. In this last webinar, we will have a very practical AI use case. And it's not about working directly inside CODESYS, but about generating HTML5 visualization elements by means of AI for the CODESYS development system. A short recap. We are now in the product landscape talking about the right upper part, about the visualization. And the visualization in CODESYS is, of course, a powerful thing in order to visualize logic elements of the PLC application. Now we can visualize variables, movements, things like that. And for that purpose, you have on the right side of the visualization editor, typically the visualization toolbox with a certain list of elements that you can immediately use. However, if you realize a new visualization screen, an operator screen, you will for sure need some new elements. You can generate directly visualization objects inside the CODESYS development system and then reuse them. Or, this is the new feature, work with HTML5. Just a short summary of these two possibilities, or at least of the first one. Creating new visualization elements inside CODESYS has certain advantages. It's quite simple and easy and quick to use, and therefore I really like that personally. Just see an example that I've realized once myself, a very small cylinder which is moving left and right. And the main idea is, or the main concept, the main tool for that is the so-called interface editor of the visualization box, which you can open and close, and in which you can then add verbal names that you can reference then in your concrete application. So I did that for this small cylinder and saved that in a library called RWL. And as soon as this library is imported into my project, I have this small cylinder object available and can then reuse it in my new PLC application and the according visualization. However, there are disadvantages. There are, of course, very limited options because you're using standard elements or scalable vector graphics, and as well the functional scope is limited to what CODESYS offers. Therefore, since some years, there's the possibility to create HTML5 elements. Why is that interesting? Because, of course, HTML5 is a standard for website creation. Therefore, you find a lot of different examples and templates in the World Wide Web, which you can just download or create yourself in case you are familiar with HTML5. Inside that language, you have comprehensive functionality that you can implement. However, and this is important to know from the beginning, using HTML5 has as well disadvantages. One thing is that the created elements may only be used for the CODESYS web visualization, so not for the target visualization. Furthermore, you have to activate that hook here in the visualization manager, support client animations and overlay of native elements. And furthermore, the way to implement these HTML5 elements is a little bit more complex. There are several steps to go through. Before we take a look to the steps, we take a look to the necessary files for such an element. For each element, you need that list of files. So you need a so-called element wrapper. We'll talk in a minute about it. We will need cascading style sheets, defining the look and feel of the element. We need a scalable vector graphic for the icon, representing the new element inside the CODESYS development system. We need the function itself in the form of a JavaScript file. And we need a table for the localization of the UI languages. Now, where do you get HTML5 sources or files? Yeah, look at the World Wide Web. There's one link already listed here. or just search with your favorite search engine, for example, for HTML5 demo gorge with SVG animated or something similar. There's a page on our online help in which you can find the basic procedure described. And of course, we could now directly click on that link and go through that online help, and that would be the topic of the whole webinar. Don't worry, I will show you that, how it is done in a live way, in a very easy way. And how we want to do that? I wanted to start with a very simple example, just a Boolean switcher. And this is already the result, which you are seeing here in the screenshot of the CODESYS development system. But we want to start from the scratch, going through all the steps, at first step in theory, and then in practical way. So there are multiple steps to go. I already mentioned that. And without discussing these steps right now, I just want to start with the first one. Of course, we need an HTML5 control. So you could realize it yourself with the tools mentioned below, or you download it from the web. Second thing is, we need the element wrapper. We just mentioned it before. Now, what it is and what it is needed for. Well, if we are taking any HTML5 control, then it has any methods. There is no universal API defined. This means that working with the CODESYS development system, this does not match because CODESYS has a well-defined API. So we need a kind of adapter for those two elements which connects both systems together. And this is nothing else as this element wrapper. Now, what do we need to do with this element wrapper? Yeah, in fact, it's a JavaScript file which we need to program. And there are a lot of methods and functions that are needed to fill out. These are just a few screenshots of these, let's say, positions that we need to fill out by means of a very well-defined template. Maybe you're not a JavaScript programmer as I am. If you are, then this is easy stuff for you. I'm not, therefore, I was a little bit scared seeing all this code stuff here, but the good news is, don't worry, there will be help. Now let's move further to the third step. It's the HTML5 control editor, which we will be needing. Now, what is it? It's an editor that is delivered together with the CODESYS development system, which helps us to fill out several important parameters, generic information, but especially the mapping of the properties of the elements that can be then used inside the CODESYS development system. And the third thing is the localization of the UI interface, because we want to have in an English switched CODESYS development system, of course, English text inside the property dialog for the visualization elements. Or if you have in German or in French or in Italian or whatever language you speak, we want to have the right language. And this is, of course, necessary to bring inside the tool. So this is the purpose of the editor and the XML file we are generating with it. So to take that picture once again, we are now focusing on that exact interface between wrapper and the CODESYS development system. Now, how does this look like? We start this control editor from the directory where the CODESYS development system is installed. We open it and create a new XML file and then fill out all the properties that are listed up there. So generic information such as company, the display name of that element, in which category it should be listed up, which additional files are necessary. Furthermore, we have to discuss about the control properties. Now, these properties are the properties that are listed then inside the CODESYS development system when we click on the referenced element to fill out the variables that are changed or that are taken to change the element, to change some parameters such as colors and so on. And you see there are a lot of settings to make here about property type, variable type, description ID, editor type, and the methods that have to be called. Furthermore, as I already mentioned, the localizations, the text. So here I have a German and an English UI. And after I've finished all these settings and saved this XML file, I need to install it to the library repository here by means of that button. So this was the third step. Again, here, don't worry, we get help. Let's move to the fourth step. After we have created that new element, we need to bring it into the visualization element repository. And this is now done inside the CODESYS development system, so no external tool necessary. Under tools, you find that command here, and then we can install the XML file we have just created and save it, then install in that list here. After that, the fifth and the last step is just to use that element as it was an element provided by the setup. So I have it installed here, and then I can drag and drop it into my visualization screen and just use it. Now, these were the 5 steps, and be honest, does that sound complicated to you? In case it does, then probably because it is. But don't worry, as I already said, we get AI help now. How do we do that? We provide an AI system to files. One file is a description of the concept, the second one is a kind of template. And we give it a prompt, a command, what it should do. And this is what I want to do right now. For that purpose, I switch to my favorite AI system. I'm working with Claude Desktop here. And maybe we start with the Markdown files that I have already prepared to my directory and open these 2 files here. And now I need the prompt, and for that purpose I go to the source of the PowerPoint slideshow that you were just seeing, and I copy that prompt into my system. Yeah, and the main information is create an HTML5 Boolean button that allows me to switch a variable and change the color depending on the value currently being used. I gave the additional command, please respond in English, because somehow Claude knows that I'm a German guy and it always tries to answer me in German. Therefore, you saw that at first step, all these texts were underlined. So then we can watch Claude working, can even open what it does in detail. So at first step, it checked all the Markdown files here, took the basic information for that. And now it starts to create all the necessary files. So it started to create the folder structure, the table with the localization strings. It already created even the scalable vector graphic, the icon for me, a cascading style sheet. And now you see most of the work is done here in that element wrapper. Remember, this is the adapter to bring the HTML5 control to the CODESYS development system. So we need that adapter to match both sides. What is done right now? It's even creating the XML file. So this thing that we manually should do with the HTML5 control editor. So a lot of, let's say, XML settings, which I could do in the graphical surface of that tool, but AI helps me to do that automatically without that I need to do something, just by means of the information that it received by the Markdown files and the command prompt that I gave to it. Yeah, even if this takes all now 2-3 minutes, imagine how long it took me to type all that stuff. Of course, the XML file I could do by means of the graphical editor, but typing the JavaScript file for the wrapper, that could take hours if I'm not that familiar. Maybe you guys laugh and say, hey, JavaScript, where's the problem? I can do that myself. However, I even doubt that you're that fast. Then you see that the AI system even creates a standalone test page, so I could test it without CODESYS development system, which is not necessary at all. And then it creates a folder for the output. And hopefully I will get then a list of the necessary files which I can download and use in my system. Here it is. All these files are now created. And if we take a look, then it summarizes what it has done and gives me a description of the behavior and even some information how I should work with these files now. Okay, I will do that right now. I download them and save them to my prepared directory, to my live. Save that zip file here and switch directly to it. Take a look at it. Copy all these elements and extract them into the right folder. Now that's it, and I can go back to my CODESYS development system. Now remember, if we go back to the presentation and see the steps here, we have now finished all the first 3 steps. Now the 4th step is to install that newly created element into the element repository. You saw that I find that under Tools, and then I can press on Install. Again here, path was lost, so I have to look for it once again. Find that completely created XML file, open it, and then it will be installed into the system. I don't know why this takes a few seconds. I only know that it does, but in the meantime, we can do something different. We can open this HTML5 control editor manually and take a look into it in order to see that it's as well available and working. Maybe I switch back to the CODESYS development system so that we have an overview on both systems. Even that takes a little bit to start up. Don't ask me why, but anyway. Usually don't need to start it. I just wanted to show you that in parallel to the installation of that new element. So let's see which command is finished earlier. You see Boolean button was now included. And what you see as well, that there's a new category automatically detected. But let's take nevertheless a look to this one here. Take now this created XML file here. And then it shows me exactly the things that Claude Desktop has done for me. It filled out company name, filled out the toolbox category, which was already taken in here. It filled out the control properties. Maybe if I switch back and just use that icon right now. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Then you see in the control editor that exactly these entries are available and were generated by the system so that I can, in my user interface, configure them. For example, I take a Boolean variable out of my simple application that I have prepared for it. It's really just tiny, just to show in principle how the system works. We see all the other properties shown up as well here in my property dialog of the CODESYS development system visualization editor. Now let's see whether this works. I'm already connected to a soft PLC CODESYS Control Win, so I can immediately download that. There was no application prepared, so really from the scratch. And then we'll download that and see whether this works as expected. So everything is running, and then if I press on the button, it's switching its color and it's switching the variable. This works as expected. Quite simple. Without big work for me. Most of the work was just importing or installing that new element and using it. Switching back to the presentation, we just listed up a little bit screenshots of what you saw now anyway. But you may say, hey, this was quite a simple example. What about a more complex example? Well, of course, this is possible too. Let's just copy that one here and send it to the tool and wait another 5 minutes, and then we can use it. Now, I don't want you to wait that long. For that purpose, I have already pre-installed that and prepared that, but with the same means. I just did it a minute before I started that presentation. So I have already a slider control, which just was generated by this prompt here. Well, I have installed it, and it's inside my toolbox. So this is here, and I can immediately use it. Well, and you see that here now the list of properties is a little bit longer than for the simple switch, and I can configure it in a more complicated way. Nevertheless, I need one variable connect to my application, and then I can download it to my soft PLC and use it as before. And for sure, this is now an element that you have not seen before inside CODESYS because it was just generated right now. Let's download it, and if we start it, you see this is yellow, why ever it was used in yellow, but I can now move it. And you see here as well the analog values being transferred, generated in absolutely the same way as I did before with that simple switch. The only reason why I didn't do with that example here, it takes a little bit longer, and I wanted to show you the principle of it. You see that this element generation is still in process, so it will run for 2-3 minutes more. However, let's conclude our webinar. You can now extend the CODESYS visualization to your personal needs. You could always do it by means of the CODESYS development system itself. This is a simple and easy way, and I like it very much. However, today I'm a new fan of HTML5 elements, at least if I'm only working with CODESYS web visualization. In order to do so, you need to know these 5 steps. You have to understand the concept. If you do so, then the rest is quite simple if we let us help by an artificial colleague, by AI, for example, as this Claude desktop. But any other AI system should do in the same way, maybe not the same speed or not the same accuracy, but however, it would work in the same way. Again, this was not a CODESYS feature which is included, but where we took an AI from outside in order to bring something into CODESYS which helps us. But this is the main idea of this webinar, to give you practical ideas how you could use artificial intelligence for your daily work, how this could help you. And coming back to me, I'm not a JavaScript programmer. I have very basic knowledge of that language. That the system did it for me is a big benefit. However, I'm the one using it, I'm the one controlling it, and in case there's an error happening, which honestly happens too from time to time, even there the tool helps me to fix that and to see what the problem was. Now, last slide. You can get further information, of course, on the website for the online help, as we've just mentioned before. There's even a package which offers HTML5 elements, which you can just install or take a look at it in order to get a basic idea of the concept, in order to have templates, examples. Then some more, let's say, sources for elements that you could just download, and a link to a related video. Now, I'm personally very busy today and not available during the next day. Therefore, if you have further questions, please do not hesitate to write us to my team, productmarketing@codesys.com. In parallel, the chat is still open for a few minutes, and you can pose your questions there. We will try to answer them even immediately or afterwards if you send them to the email listed up here. Now I thank you very much for your attention. I hope you will have fun and good success using CODESYS and the artificial colleague next to you. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I see you during one of the events soon. Bye-bye.